Hello, found footage fans, and welcome to We Found a Tape. We're a podcast dedicated to all things found footage. Shaky cams, paranormal sightings, and everything with an authentic edge to make it all feel real. My name's John,
And I'm David.
and join us as we hit play and uncover what lies beyond the tape. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Found a Tape. My name's John,
And I'm David.
and
this
is Bella.
Bella making a guest appearance on the pod.
Yep, this is what happens when you have a pet that constantly needs attention.
Yeah, you'll see my dog pop up from time to time.
But yeah, welcome to another episode of We Found a Tape.
Yeah.
Today we're checking out a movie that I personally had never heard of until David randomly told me about it a few days ago. And Jesus, man, I've been sleeping on this one.
Yeah, it's a real good one, man. I watch it a few times a year since it's come out. It's just like one of those guilty pleasure things where you just put it on for background noise, but it's quite entertaining because it's got like some gnarly shit in there and some funny points as well because a couple of them are comedians in there and they just say funny off the wall shit. They do off the wall shit in this movie here. So but yeah, so we're talking about Living Among Us.
Made by Brian A. Metcalf. He was the writer and director on this. He also did a TV show, I believe, called Underdeveloped, which also stars Thomas Ian Nicholas, who is also the main star in this film as well. A crazy cast. Quite honestly, it's pretty all-star. If you really think about it, not A-list, but
a lot of noticeable teen movies from the 90s and the early 2000s, comedies, things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. That's actually a very good point. There's a lot of comedy representation in this. So someone who is a comedy fan, even just seeing all these actors together in a found footage horror film is pretty wild. So Thomas E. Nicholas, who we obviously know from American Pie. We have William Sadler, who plays, I believe he plays Death in Bill and Ted.
Yes.
The ball guy, yeah. We also have John Hurd, this is John Hurd's last film, which is insane. I did not know that. Obviously, he plays the dad in Home Alone and various other films. We also have Andrew Keegan, who many may know from 10 Things I Hate About You, where he's most notably from. But yeah, a good sort of all-star cast, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the 90s, early 2000s cast. It's those famous teen actors that played teen roles in movies.
Very much so, and successful. All of them successful films as well.
Oh yeah,
incredibly successful, which is great. That's so good. But yeah, before we dive into it, how do you feel about a synopsis, David?
I think I would love a synopsis right now. Something simple, something down to the point, something about this movie, Living Among Us. Hit me with it, John.
Oh, I think I've got one that you'll like. I've prepared this beforehand. So, Living Among Us from 2018. A 3-person documentary film crew are invited to spend a week with vampires. Although mundane at first, can they contain their true nature and live among us?
Yeah. I like that.
Hell yeah.
Here's here's my take on this movie real quick as far as the timeline. So, they were supposed to go stay for a week. Did they indeed stay for a week, or was it only a couple of days, or just one day?
I
I mean,
think
as many times I watch this movie, it feels like it was just a course of one, maybe like a day and a half, because we went into the next day, there was daytime stuff, and then they went into the evening the next day.
right. Yeah, that's where I'll be honest. I got a little bit muddled with the timeline of it, mainly just because it's all really in one setting. It's all kind of mostly indoors,
Right.
until we get to the night portion. And I mean, a lot happens. If it ends up only being 2 days or 2 nights or whatever, a lot happens in that time. I think my best guess would be they stayed sort of half of a week, so like about three nights, maybe 2. Because
Yeah,
there's
it really
definitely
is.
a part where they sleep over,
Right.
and that's where a bunch of weird shit happens.
Yeah, for sure. But this movie, I like the way it starts out. It starts out like a kind of like a 60 minutes type, news session where, they're talking about, this virus that's hitting people, and, people are becoming these, are changing and becoming these things. They start talking about vampires and how they're out in society, they exist. And they have a section leader that, comes on and does an interview real quick, talking about how, they don't hurt people. They get their blood from blood banks, things like that. There's reports of vampire attacks, and that's kind of just where the movie starts right there, that we're talking about vampires are living among us, and they're a part of our society. They're now out there, people know of them, they're aware of them, and that's how everything just starts, this whole movie.
Exactly, yeah. And they have their sectional leader, I think is what they call it, sec leader,
Yeah.
um, who's played by William Sadler. I know him from. Have you ever seen Die Hard, the second Die Hard movie?
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's the bad guy in that. And there's a scene where he's preparing to go and like attack the airport or whatever it is that the setting is, and he's butt ass naked, and he like is like doing all this like yoga and stuff in front of the mirror, and like stretching out, like just preparing to go and do fucking
it's been,
terrorism shit.
yeah, it's been a minute, but yeah, I think you're right.
But that's one of the main things I thought throughout this. I was like, God damn, I've seen this guy's booty.
I've seen those cheeks.
Yeah. But right off the bat, it felt very True Blood to me. I don't know if you've ever saw the show True Blood, but definitely felt like that to me, because there is a lot of that news broadcast stuff in there, because that's really what that show's about, is that vampires are living in amongst humans, and although in True Blood they have like a synthetic type fake blood that they drink for sustenance. In this, they go through the whole, we use blood banks and we use donations. We don't kill people, not anymore anyway.
Yeah.
So
they seem to have been reformed vampires now. They're good vampires. They don't kill people. They just take the like you said, the donations from blood banks, from people that are willing to give up the blood to help them survive and give them sustenance.
Yeah. And one thing I found quite interesting, you touched on it, is that they're scientifically explaining everything that is wrong with them. Like,
right.
We're not vampires, we have this particular condition that's based on this particular virus that gives all of these symptoms, like being unable to be in direct sunlight and like not being able to eat normal food, and they have to drink blood for some reason.
Right.
Iron deficiency or some shit. But I find that quite interesting. It's an interesting take, rather than just being like outright
vampires.
He's like, none of them really have fangs, which is which I thought was an interesting touch as well. That's a point that they make when the news crew first goes to the family's home, to say something about the fangs. He's like, "Does it look like I have fangs?"
Yeah, it's definitely entertaining. But yeah, the movie starts, after the whole news report. They cut to the news station. There's a camera guy, or a guy just holding a camera. It's a young kid, talking about how he thinks it's going to be his first job, and he thinks, he's going with this camera crew. He's talking about this guy that's done all these stories and basically sucking on his sack like he's some kind of like, news reporter god. And it's Thomas, and he's in a meeting room with this girl, and they're kind of bantering back and forth. And here comes the manager, or the boss of the news station, and he comes in there. He's kind of giving them the whole spiel about, okay, you got the green light to go interview these vampires. You're going to go for a week. Here's the ground rules. And by the way, you can only go with 3 people. And they're kind of, back and forth talking about who are we going to take, or this and that. And the manager, the owner of the news station, is like, no, you're taking Benny. And they're like, who? Benny. Taking Benny. He's all, Benny, get in here. He's all yelling at him. And, here comes this kid running with the camera. Turns out he's like the brother of his wife. And, he's trying to give him a break in life, because he's like, hasn't amounted to shit. So here he is, trying to do his first job. And, he's going to do fine for this. He needs to get his feet wet. So this is where he's going. And that's kind of where we start from there.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it was funny. One other thing I noted, there's a few moments, it starts really at this point in the movie, where a lot of people look at Benny and they're like, is that thing off? Is that thing off? Are you not recording? So definitely a found footage trope there. They're checking in on the camera, speaking to it directly, and sort of saying, is this thing, are you recording this or what? Comes up a few times. I thought that was quite fun. And then 2 things, the list of items that they tell them not to bring, I found that really interesting. They're like, you can't bring holy water, you can't bring crosses, you can't bring knives or any weapons or anything like that. So they're going in completely unarmed. So
right.
we think we'll find out about that later on. But yeah, I thought that was quite funny as well, because they're like, oh man, we can't take this, we can't take holy water, we can't take a cross. Like,
yeah, like how are we going to defend ourselves?
Yeah. And then as well, they start to take an inventory of the stuff they are actually taking. So they go through the list, 2 DSLRs, another like handheld camera. They take a Hi8 that goes in night vision. So that's a good segue into later night vision, another found footage trope that we love to see. And then also these little like pocket cams and sort of hidden cams that they're going to set up around the house, which all sort of feeds through an app, which was very high quality for 2018, or even 2013. That's when they made this film. So yeah, it was interesting to see all of that, bringing that and going through the inventory of what they're actually taking. I always love seeing that. I don't know why, but like it reminds me of This Is the End, when they're taking the inventory of all the food and drinks that they have.
Yeah.
So they sit it down. Like, I always find that really funny. So that's
Milky Way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Can I get the Milky Way?
Yeah,
I'm bummed out if I don't at least get a bite of the Milky Way.
Yeah, it's so funny. It kind of reminds you of that. But yeah, they take a lot of stuff. They also sort of argue about the Hi8 camera. They're like, why do we need that? We're not going to need night vision, or why we think there's an old camera. It comes in handy later on.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. That's classic right there, to have some night vision in a found footage movie. Now, this immediately, they take this inventory, they're getting the stuff ready, they're getting in the van, they're loading up, they're on their way, they make a pit stop. you know the main guy that's doing the interviews gets off the truck. I'll be right back. So Benny and the girl stay in the van, and they're like, what is he doing? And clearly you see him going across the street running into a church. Gone for a few minutes, and he comes running back out, and he goes, no, I had to get some holy water. And they said, we're not supposed to bring that stuff. Well, so and so is not in the field, risking his life. So, hell if I'm going to go in there unprepared. So, he grabs the holy water in water bottles. So that way it's kind of like incognito. It's just like regular water bottles. And then they're off to the spot. They're going to this house to go interview these vampires. They get there and they get to this abandoned house, and it's all dark. And, they're like, wow, they're really, giving into the aesthetic of vampirism and vampires. And then they hear, hello, excuse me. And it's the lady across the street. And she goes, are you the camera crew? I think you got the wrong house. You think we live over there? And it's like this big old, brightly lit house. It's really nice, upscale across the street. So nobody's lived there for years. And that's where we all start, they do the, hey, how you doing? I'm so-and-so. And, the woman that greets obviously is the mother, the wife of the house, which is, was it Elle? Or
Yeah, Eleanor.
Eleanor,
Yeah.
but she said Elle for short. So she invites them in. They come into the house, and immediately they're greeted by the husband as well. They do the whole meet and greet thing, and that's where we take off. They're in the house, and this is where we set down the path.
Oh, we definitely set down the path here. So they meet Andrew, who is played by John Hurd. Then we have Eleanor, which is played by Esme Bianco. We also meet Blake, who is he's my favorite character for sure. Played by Andrew Keegan. And we also meet Selvin, who is like what I refer to as like the Black Parade. This guy looked like he's straight out of My Chemical Romance concert, with the hood up and the hair covering his face, pale. This character definitely reminds me of Jasper. If you've ever seen Twilight, he reminds me of Jasper. He's like a kind of untrained, newish type vampire who can't quite control what he has yet. Everyone else is really comfortable and able to control it. He hasn't yet. So we see glimpses of that as they start to set up the interviews, where he tries to go for Carrie and stuff like that. So
and we go into we find out later on a little bit more about Selvin, but ultimately that's kind of where starts out, where they're setting the ground rules. They set up for dinner. They're kind of weirded out by dinner because it's like, well, what kind of food do y'all eat? Like, why are y'all making dinner? It's just weird. Vampires inviting you downstairs for dinner after you've gone into the room that you're going to stay in. And they go down there, and sure enough, it's full plates of food, ham steak, vegetables, mashed potatoes, some bread, and then everyone else is just sipping what you think is wine in a glass, but vampires' blood, that's what they're drinking. They're open about what they're drinking. They're pointing out that this is how they survive. This is what they live off of. This is their food, and how they live every day. This is what keeps them alive and keeps them vampires.
Absolutely. And that's what ultimately that's where they're starting to give this glimpse of the life of a vampire, basically, that we don't hunt humans. We just stay at home and we drink our blood, which is from blood banks, which is this whole thing that we've been doing in order to make sure that we don't kill humans. We're ready to coexist with humans, and that's kind of the first moment where the crew starts to sort of find things a little fishy. They start to look at each other. They're just kind of taken aback by the fact that there's food that's been prepared, and it's actually good food. It's not as if it's like
it's like it's not like TV dinners that were reheated in the microwave.
Yeah, it was like
Hot Pockets.
Yeah, something weird. Like You know, like, oh, this is what humans eat. This is what humans on the TV eat. It's like fucking
Some
TV dinner, hot pockets or something.
raw ass hot dog and just a cold bun from the bag.
Exactly. But yeah, that's when they start to question things a little bit. I think that's when, especially Mike, who's played by Thomas E. Nicholas, he's the main guy. He definitely at this point is starting to, I guess, the whole time because he's a seasoned journalist, investigative journalist. He's the one that sort of he has a feeling that something's not right this whole time, honestly. So that's definitely not new information to him. He assumed that this was going to be the case and always goes in with sort of one eye open, one eye closed.
Right.
So, yeah, he definitely starts to figure out that things aren't quite what they seem. And that's when we start to go into the interviews.
And I really liked how they were prepared when they went downstairs, because we go back to those tiny spy cameras that they put everywhere. They also had the button cameras that fit through the buttonholes on the shirts. So Benny and Mike both had button cameras on, so that way they could, film what's going on, the interaction, because they didn't want any cameras downstairs. Things like that. Well, actually, Benny did come downstairs with the camera. They had asked him if he was going to eat, but he said, nah, he's going to eat later. He's manning the camera right now. But they still had the button cameras, so that way they can still catch things even when they weren't allowed to bring cameras. And then, after that, right away we jump right into it. We're starting with the interviews. They interview Andrew first, just to kind of get some backstory. Now, what I didn't understand is I never took the time to, people can always just say Google it, but I'm old school. I was born in the 80s, so asking somebody for knowledge is more my first go-to than Googling things. What the hell is a venture capitalist?
That's a great question. I think it's just someone who buys businesses and flips them. I think I'm not too clued in on my venture capitalism, but I think it's just like an entrepreneur who's just sort of looking for ideas to like buy businesses and basically make money from that.
Got it. Okay. All right. Yeah, so Andrew is a venture capitalist. That's his day job or night job.
I don't know that he is. I think it's definitely I think it's more so a facade for the cameras.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, yeah, he's a venture capitalist by night and he sleeps during the day because we find out they sleep during the day and it's essential to them. But he starts asking Andrew, how old he is, and this guy's over 140, 150 years old, and kind of talking to him, why he is a vampire, what makes him a vampire. And this is where he comes into, there's a medical explanation for every symptom of vampirism. The exposure to sunlight, the skin will boil and burn because lack of something with the blood. It's the lack of blood that they produce, something that they produce in the blood that causes that. And drinking blood, that's where they get their life force from. That's what keeps them alive, because it regenerates their cells. So there's medical explanations for every symptom that a vampire would have. But technically they're not vampire. They're labeled vampires, like you said, but medically they're not. They're just a human with a condition. But they also have, as we find out later in the movie, super speed. They can jump. They have superhuman strength, things like that. So I don't think there's a medical there's a medical what is the word that I'm looking for, like fuck, help me out, John.
I was gonna say like an explanation.
Well, medical explanation, but there's a medical diagnosis. There's not a medical diagnosis for superhuman strength and fast speed, things that are not found in a common human, regardless of the disease or symptom, medical symptom that they have. So yeah,
this is where we start to get a bit more fuel for that fire that there's something not quite right about these vampires that they're speaking to. They're not very forthcoming with information, especially not at first. At least Andrew and Eleanor, they're not ones that are very forthcoming with information. They seem to kind of get agitated at the questions, which clearly they're trying to fish for information, of course, which is a whole thing about journalism, right? So, and that's where there's a bit of a disconnect between the two groups, right? The vampires are kind of standoffish. We don't want to tell you, and then the film crew, they're kind of standoffish as well because they're like, well, how am I supposed to do my job if you're not going to answer questions? Then why are we here? And that's kind of where that rift starts to come. And really, that's where Blake, I think, ties everything together because he is very forthcoming. He is like a Hollywood type vampire who, wants to be famous, wants to be, in front of the camera and, this like tall, good looking guy, your typical kind of young new age vampire who's all about flash and trying to show off and partying, yeah, things like that. So he's very forthcoming. He's willing to help them out. He's willing to answer questions. He doesn't give a shit. He's kind of a renegade.
Right. He doesn't really care about this whole. Yeah, he doesn't really care about this whole thing that, covering up, what they really are, and trying to blend in with society and things like that. Like he wants this to come out that they're vampires, they kill people, things like that. I really like the part where he started talking about the story of when he was in this camp or prison and the guard didn't like him, so he would beat the shit out of him or punish him anytime he got. And as he was on his deathbed, Andrew turned him and he goes, the first thing I did when I became a vampire, I fucked up that guard. He goes, like, there was nothing left of him, basically. Like he took his time with him. Like he didn't even drink from him because it was like insulting, like, because the guy was such shit to him and didn't mean anything to him. Like he didn't want to waste drinking blood from such a piece of shit. So, but I mean, he beat him to death. He beat him, till there was nothing left of the guy, basically, from what he was saying. And he goes, yeah, and we're still very much, like that today. We're we still kill humans for blood. And as soon as he was starting to get into that, you hear the in the background, and Andrew's behind Mike, and he's telling him to stop it, like, what are you doing? Like, well, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. And he's all, well, yeah, well, not so much anymore. And he kind of just gets quiet because he's not supposed to say anything, and he's just like spilling all the beans, all the juicy details. So there's definitely like some funny parts in this because he makes it funny, because he's just so out there and so high energy and so I don't care, I'm a vampire, I'm gonna do what I want when I want.
Yeah, that's what makes him the best part of this. And that's where we get to the first night. Just after that, we get to the first night where they go to sleep, and I think I maybe looked away for a brief moment, but there was when they're in the bedroom and they're sleeping, they have a camera going, and that's where Selvin comes in to the bedroom, and that's where he sort of high speed sort of jumps over to Carrie while she's there, and then when she wakes up, he like jumps back out the room real quickly. I don't remember why like that all happened. The last thing I remember prior to that was just they saw someone at the window, and I think it was Andrew at the window or Selvin maybe.
I think it was Selvin because he was just, like you said, he's one of those vampires that can't quite control his urge. So he's kind of just stalking in the window. Honestly, that's who I thought it was. But when he comes in the middle of the night, he's kind of like sniffing her, like he's about to, bite her. And then Blake comes in, he's, telling him to, get out of the room and stuff like that, because he's trying to stop him from, attacking the girl that's asleep on the floor. And as soon as they shut the door, Mike and Benny were, kind of awake. They were still kind of, light sleepers while Carrie was on the floor, just dead asleep. and they were like, what the fuck was that? So they go back and look at the footage, and that's all he was doing. He was kind of sniffing her and, you know, kind of checking her out. Like, you could tell right away when Selvin first laid eyes on her when she came in the door, like he just immediately like, I want that, you know, like a dog, you know, wanting something like a piece of food, you know, I want that, or a cat even.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Very animalistic
Yeah,
trait.
yeah, and that's really, that's always a very common trait, especially with vampires and vampire films. They're always very like obsessed. Like, look at Twilight. Like, he's obsessed with, you know, Bella and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely a trait within vampires, vampire films, which love it. It's kind of like a neo-traditional type vampire where there's some new terms, some medical terms, a new age way of describing vampires, but also there's those common tropes of vampires that are in there. I did appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we get to during the day. They've slept during the night. After all of that, and that's when Carrie starts to get sick. She starts to not feel very well, and they go downstairs for breakfast. And they start to set up the hidden cameras. That's where they put all them in like the bookcases and things like that. And after they finished doing that, Blake comes rocking out.
Yeah, he's wide awake during the day.
Yeah, and they're caught off guard. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've like trained myself." He's like, "I'm not used to it." He's like This is like a night owl. A vampire night owl is
right
during the day. He's like, "I'm used to it. I've trained myself. Like, the dim light like doesn't affect me any longer because I've just been doing it for so long." I'm like, "Oh, this guy's crazy."
Yeah.
And that's when he starts to show some more of the vampire traits. Where one of the famous scenes I think from this film is when he he gets them to open the window, and they're like, he's like, are you filming this? Are you sure you're recording? You're recording, right? So he pulls his arm out and they open up the window and it starts to burn up because of the sun. And he's like, oh. And then they shut it over and it's all like, you know, blistered and like all fucked up. Smoking, yeah. And then he's like, "You guys want to go to an interview now?" He's like, all fired up, and
yeah, he's all like, "You think this is you think this is enough to keep your boss, you know, interested? Because I don't want you guys to go anywhere yet." Yeah, this dude's like really determined to interview and talk about, you know, anything and everything. Like, he really wants to get on camera. Like, he's really, really determined. I like that. He was definitely like the standout character in this movie.
Hell yeah. And that's where it's just so funny, man. And after that, they decide, which I think is also an interesting thing, they decide to sleep during the day so that they could stay up during the night so they're able to capture more of the vampire stuff.
Right.
Good idea, honestly. It's like working night shift, right? Sleep during the day, work during the night. So it was one of those types. And they decide to go to sleep and end up sleeping till like 6 o'clock, like 6 or 7. I think 6 o'clock because the sun hasn't fully gone down yet, so the vampires aren't quite up, and they're all like disheveled and, you know, kind of probably overslept, right? Because they've slept during the night, then they've slept during the day, and now they're like, whoa. I don't know if you've ever overslept by accident, but sometimes it's worse than if you just had a normal sleep.
Yeah, because you wake up all startled and you're thrown off by it, and it just like throws your whole rhythm off for the day. So yeah, I know what you're talking about, man.
Groggy.
Yep. You woke up worse than you started.
Exactly. Yeah, and it only sort of goes and gets worse from there because we find out that Carrie Carrie, her name is, she's really sick. She's not going anywhere. So they have her just stay in bed while the two of them, so Benny and Mike, go down and they start to, follow them around. And that's when they get it sprung on them that their sectional leader is coming through, Samuel, who's played by William Sadler. And he's very intimidating. He's clearly an elder of some sort. And he brings out his two daughters. One of them's called Sybil, and she's a bit feisty. And then Journey, I think, is the other one. And they it's very strange because they go to like shake their hands and they like curtsy in front of them.
Right.
And then Sybil's like very anti-human, like
You're nothing but food to us.
yeah, you're nothing but food. Like, I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to shake your hand unless I'm going to eat you. That type of thing. Yeah, that especially after you've overslept, going into that type of environment. Jesus, man.
And it's very much, like in today's society with kids and adults, everybody that's an adult, right? You're seasoned. You have knowledge. Like you know where to, keep the professionalism and whatever you're trying to sell for, the sake of, whatever you're trying to accomplish. And then, of course, the kids are not going to give a shit because they haven't learned the importance of that. So they just want to be who they want to be and when they want to be it. So they could care less. They're just going to be open. Kids are the most honest people in this world. I don't know if you know that, but nobody is more honest than a kid. Like if you're dressed like dog shit, you go and ask one of your friends, they'll be like, nah, you don't look so bad. You go ask a kid, be like, you look like shit, man. They're going to tell you like straight up. There's nobody more honest than a young person because they don't have that courtesy filter yet. They haven't learned that.
You're totally right. Yeah, if you ever want to be insulted, right to your face, go and ask a kid how you look.
Yeah, exactly.
You look old. All right. Thanks,
little bastards.
Thanks, kid. And then that's when you roundhouse kick them in the face.
Yeah, you just go do the run.
To respect their elders, and that's really the key theme of this film. Respect your elders.
Yeah, or you get a running drop kick.
But yeah, as they sort of go along, like things definitely get a lot weirder. We find out that they do these rituals, and now that the sect leader is here, they tell them to come down with no camera, and they put them into this ritual, which I thought was quite a weird ritual, to be fair. They strap a naked woman with obvious fake tits because you can see the scars under her.
Right.
And they tie her to the table, and that's where they, they start to cut parts of her and like drink it and like all that. Like, it was kind of weird. I think it was more so just to shock them. Like, oh, like we're trying to get a rise out of them because they are humans and they should be scared and they should fear this type of thing. That's what I got from it. I don't think it's really like a true ritual. I think it's more so just like
for show.
For show. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. For
show. And one interesting part that I picked up on here, though, is that when Samuel meets the film crew, he says to Mike, you're the one who uncovered the story about the blood banks, didn't you? And he's like, yeah, that was me. And then that's when we find out that he's specifically asked for him to be there to break the story for this,
right?
Which sent me in a bit of like okay, it's definitely something more sinister here.
Yeah,
because of that, there's no way.
This is part of the movie where we wave the red flag because there's something definitely there's some kind of motive here going on.
Yeah. It feels like a trap at that point when they sort of, and they do it so well in this film. They sort of lay the seeds very. It's not too much where it's overbearing and it like gives away a major plot point, and then the rest of the movie's like a slog to get there. It builds it up throughout. I think the pacing of this was quite good. I definitely put that as one of my parts that I liked about this film. The way that it does that, it puts those seeds out of like, okay, maybe they're not what they say they are, and Blake ends up bringing them, and they go on like a kind of ride along,
Right. So after the whole ceremony thing, they go back to their room, and Blake comes and knocks on the door, and he goes,
Right. Yeah.
what did you think of the whole ceremony thing? And he's kind of like playing it off like, what'd you think of that whole shit show? This
Yes.
bullshit down there. And they're like, well, we it was okay. Mike was trying to act not shocked because he's been to like the African cannibal tribes and things like that. So, he's seen some stuff, and he goes, well, you want to really see what real vampires do? So kind of takes him, like you said, like on a ride along, him and Selvin. And I like the part where he goes, all right, you ready? You ready? And they both grab him like they're going to take him off the balcony, like they're going to throw him off the balcony. And no, we're just kidding. We're just kidding. Come on, come on, come on. But before all that, we see the sisters, Sybil and Journey.
Yes.
So Sybil and Journey are in the pool outside, and they can see from the balcony Benny and Mike are outside before Blake had came in, and they're swimming out there, and they're having like a little lover session. So they're obviously more than sisters because they're making out in the pool and having a little moment. So they're like, I thought they were sisters. It's like one of those weird things. And that's when Blake comes in and that whole thing happens.
Right.
And then, they go sneak out the back door, trying to get past the windows and everything out to the street. And so, that's where that happens. And then, they take him on the tour of what a real vampire does.
He wants people to know what real vampires are like. He wants fear for vampires, not this subservient version of vampires that are like,
Right.
oh yeah, we are one and the same. Like, no. It's like, we are vicious, we are superior, and we are killers. And that's where they take them to. It's like a stoner's house, right? They take them there, and there's like a bunch of stoners, and they just fucking rip them apart.
Yeah, that was really interesting because as they're coming in, it's Blake that comes through, and the guy that opens the fridge, he just like takes his head off like you were opening a jar of pickles, and the head just goes flying. There's blood everywhere, and they're shocked at what they're seeing. And he's all, come on, let's go. He's like, this is like, they're going to like his favorite museum or his favorite like toy store, and he's like, oh, that was nothing, come and check this out. And they go into the living room, and they're talking to these guys, and that one guy, the owner of the house, gets up, and he's all like, I need y'all to get the fuck out. And he's all like, so and so, go get my gun. And he pulls out a knife. He's all, oh, a knife. And he's very like comedic, like he's not scared or anything, like he's just like, nothing's gonna happen to him. And the guy fucking stabs. He's like, oh, nothing. And Benny and Mike are just filming the whole thing, watching all this shit unfold. Now, as a spectator, I would be like shocked because, of course, this is my first time seeing this, and it's happening right in front of my face. I would be shocked as shit, man. And he's just holding it together so well. Like, Benny's probably freaking out behind the camera because, he's green. He's a green cameraman. And then Mike's over there like freaking out in his mind, but keeping a straight face, like, don't show my cards. I'm not scared or anything. So it's crazy, man, that they're keeping it together while all this madness is unfolding, all this killing is going on. And then Selvin's over there just drinking out of one of the guys, just like, he's at the fruit punch bowl at the party and stuff, just taking in his fill.
Hell yeah. That's when we start to see more so about the hidden camera stuff. We see that
Right.
Samuel and Eleanor have a little bit of a thing, and we see Andrew talking to Blake, and he's like, what, do you realize what you've done? Like, you've blown everything. Like, you've blown our cover, basically. And that's where you start to find out more that, like, really this wasn't a way for them to showcase that vampires are together with humans. They plan on taking them over. So they wanted to, like,
Right.
have an element of surprise where they're comfortably welcomed in, and that's where they could strike.
Right.
So,
It's like getting invited through the front door like a vampire
Right.
would.
exactly, and that's where we find that out, and they start to tool up, is what I like to refer to it as. Mike pulls out all his stuff, his holy water, his crosses, his knives, silver knife, guns with silver bullets.
Bullets.
Yeah, he's like, he came prepared. He did not listen to the instructions.
Yeah, hell
He's
no.
like,
I wouldn't
am
either,
not
man.
going in.
I
I'm
would have
not.
came armed to the teeth, man.
Hell yeah, yeah. And he did, and it served them well. That's when things start to really shift into high gear. We start to see them fighting with the vampires. They start to take over. Some of them they stab Blake, and they start to fight with. They chase them around the house and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that's where they break another one of the rules, where it was don't go down into the basement, and the basement door is like wide open, so they've been trapped into going there. And when they go downstairs, it's like a carpet factory, which I thought was insane.
That's what it was. I thought it was tapestries.
Everywhere. Yeah, it's like carpets and like old trinkets and stuff. And there's a painting that looks like Eleanor, which is like really old and regal looking. And that's where we find out that she's an elder. That she's actually she's the head of the family. It's not Andrew. It's Eleanor. She's like the head one.
The sire. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why everyone sort of bows to her, really. And we also find out that in this basement, there's like tons of just dead bodies everywhere. So when they drain someone, they just dump them down in the basement. And what they find there are dwellers, which is those sort of bottom feeder vampires that are so
very animal.
Yeah, they're the most animalistic because they're so starved of blood and food, essentially, that they turn into these beings that are mindless.
So almost like zombie vampires.
Right, yeah, it's like zombies. It's kind of like in Blade, where they have like the dwellers that are like deprived down in like that dungeon thing.
They're like ghouls.
Yeah, they're like ghouls. Just down there, just disgusting bottom feeders. And at that point is when they find out that Carrie is now turning as well. She's been turned by Selvin, and her transformation is complete. She then turns into a vampire, so she sacrifices herself to chase off the dwellers as they make their way out. And that's where we see the first glimpse of night vision down in the dark gas basement. And then it gets to they get chased by, I think it's Selvin that's down there.
Yeah, because they mentioned early in the movie that he likes to spend a lot of time in the basement, so it was definitely Selvin.
Mm-hmm. And it's creepy the way it's done because of the night vision, like the green, like you see the shadowy figure sort of in the background, and then it starts to come into focus, and then that's when they get attacked and they're able to get out. And that's where they start to defend themselves and find out that they can get rid of Eleanor, and it'll take out at least Andrew, because he is the maker of, or she made him basically. And then just chaos ensues. That's where they ultimately start opening up the windows. It's daytime now, and they start to burst into flames. And that's where we think it's over, but they run out to the car and they're going to escape, and then it cuts to like a news bulletin, and we see Samuel there, and he's being interviewed by which is actually the director and writer of the film.
Oh wow, okay.
Ryan Metcalf. He's the news anchor at the end, who is talking to Samuel, and he's asking him about what can you say about these allegations about a film crew that you, and he's like, oh no, the usual way of explaining things and how things happened. And then after we see the head of the news studio, or their manager, basically the guy at the beginning who's giving them the assignment, he is like looking disheveled, and he like shares the footage of what's come
happened.
up. Yeah, shows you the ritual, which they've like censored.
They censored the boobs. Yeah,
shows you the ritual, and then it shows you ultimately what happens to Mike and Benny. They are ultimately killed by Blake. who pops up in the back seat all burnt.
Yeah, he managed to get out to the sun and get into the van, and he's just all burnt to a crisp.
Yep.
That was good stuff, man.
Yeah, and that's where it sort of blows the whole lid off the whole thing about how, vampires were never really going to coexist, which ultimately, and I just sort of thought of this now, like, Mike ultimately at the end of the day has broke that news again, like, hey, vampires are using blood banks to get food, and then also he's like, and also breaking news, they're shitheads and they're trying to kill us all.
Take over.
Yeah.
I like that though. Like it was his his final, like he gave his life for this story, but at the same time, he pulled it off. The footage got recovered. The one thing I don't understand is that how did they get the footage? Did Blake deliver the footage?
That's a good question. I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Because I would say yes, because now Eleanor's gone, so is Andrew. So I mean, it's just him, right? Because Selvin probably got killed in the basement, when the whole interaction happened. So it's just Blake now. He wanted, people to fear him in the beginning. He said, I could take those tapes. When the ruse was up, he's like, man, I could deliver those tapes myself. I don't need you. So in the end, I think that Blake delivered the tapes, and this is what happened.
That's a good shout. Yeah, I think so too. And he's sent it to the news crew, and that's why the boss is so disheveled looking, because he's obviously saw all of this footage and shared it. Yeah,
saw his wife's brother get killed.
Yeah,
he sent him out there on this first job, and it was his last job.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. It was Blake all along.
Yeah. He was the one that came out on top. Wow. The new age vampires is what thrived and their ways.
Exactly. Hell yeah.
But it was a fun ride, man. It was a super fun ride. The kills, the humor, Benny acting like a green, cameraman, where they're stupid, they're uneducated about the process. They get emotional about things to where, when they were looking at the sacrifice, he's like, we need a helper, we need to do something. And then when they're up in the room, why didn't we do anything? We should have helped that girl. And, he's just so emotionally invested now, like after everything that had happened, typical green cameraman, that doesn't know his role to stay quiet behind the camera and not get involved.
Yeah. And that's probably a tough thing to do, especially in these investigative journalism roles, like similar with, Cannibal Holocaust. Like that's one where they don't really get involved,
right?
But that's definitely, it's a real thing, because especially if you're being welcomed into that culture and you're there based on being either vouched for or through trust, or for whatever reason, it's a privilege for you to be there, and you take as much as you can get, and you try and sort of still be vigilant and keep your safety, but also, like, you can't be getting involved. Like he said, he went to tribes of cannibals, and he's obviously not going to be like, no, don't eat that person, because then it's going to antagonize them, and it like kind of almost blows your cover, because you're there like a fly on the wall almost. Just you're there documenting, and the minute you jeopardize that, the whole thing goes to shit. So if they do that early on, then they don't have a story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely, I agree. And they got their story.
They did, yeah. And it was a very smart film, I think. A lot of good choices in terms of the techniques, the handheld camera work. There was a fair amount of like long takes, I think, of them being in character and being in that situation, and I think that really helped itself. I said earlier on it was paced really well. I really enjoyed that. It didn't feel like it was dragging on, and it didn't feel like it was like nothing happened, and like by the time it finished, that's almost it's kind of that sweet spot in the middle where it's a decent sort of runtime, but an hour and a half ish, and good amount. There's a lot packed in there. Some people may not like it. I think there's some core found footage fans that may not like it. They may think it's sort of too polished, which that definitely becomes a factor in some of the more higher budget found footage films for sure. But I loved it, man. I was so impressed, and at the end of it, I was like, I almost like stood up and gave a round of applause when I finished watching it. I was like, this is good, man. I have waited to see like a found footage movie that I'd never seen or heard of prior to this, going in completely blind and being very pleasantly surprised. I loved it, David.
Yeah, it was a good one, man. That one had been on my radar to do for a little while. I just forgotten about it, and I came across it the other day when I was on Prime at work, looking at random, movies and stuff, and I was like, hey, we should do this one. I think John will get a kick out of it, so here we are.
Hell yeah. And as we mentioned, this was John Hurd's last film, which was sad. It was also made in 2013. It took 5 years to come out. I'm not sure why that. I didn't really go into. But they filmed it in 2013. He unfortunately died shortly after that, and then it was released in 2018. So.
But yeah, it was good all the way around, man. It was super entertaining. I love the kills. I love the sense of humor that Blake had. Like the annoying green cameraman that Benny was. For me, Blake and Benny definitely stood out as characters in this movie. They were kind of like polar opposites. One was super outgoing and crazy, and the other one was just kind of emotional and very new to his job and just stumbling along the way. He had to be told and yelled at for I don't know how many different things, like put the camera down and why aren't you filming, and this and that. So this movie, like I said, I mean, I watch it a few times a year because it's just like one of those guilty pleasure movies where you just put it on for background noise, but you catch the parts that it stand out for you, and it makes you chuckle a little bit because it's entertaining.
Hell yeah. It was fun. I loved the comedy aspect. There was a good amount of horror elements. I think it kind of almost wish there was a little bit more in terms of those, like the gore or the especially the animalistic nature. I guess we got that when we saw Blake and Selvin out in the wild. We got
Right.
that right. I think just the ceremony part, but when you really think about it, it was probably more of a facade than anything else, rather
Right.
than the proper thing. So yeah, I think it was purposefully tame in that sense, so they could be like, oh, this is just something that we do from time to time, kind of thing.
Right. And they made it seem like they were doing the community a favor, that they said that the girl had AIDS, and she was a prostitute, and she's just like
Right.
giving out free AIDS to everybody, like Girl Scout cookies and shit. So
Yeah, and they didn't believe it, and Blake was like, "How? I picked her up earlier."
hell yeah.
But yeah, like I was very pleasantly surprised. I loved it, David. So that's a solid pick. Solid pick.
Fantastic, sir. Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's rate this sucker. What do you think?
Hell yeah.
What do you got for me, John?
So yeah, I've gone on for about 5 minutes saying about how much I like this film. So I really don't have many complaints. Just the sort of disorientation of sort of where the timeline was in the film is really my only thing, and maybe some slight sort of gore when it came to it. But honestly, overall, it reminded me a lot of True Blood, and I like that. I like that True Blood found footage style. Kind of, yeah, I liked it a lot. The camera techniques that they used in this were just, yeah, I thought very well done, and fits right in with some of those really good found footage films. Overall, it's a solid 4 for me. 4 tapes.
Fantastic. It's a good score. That is a fantastic score. So I loved everything in this movie. Obviously, I watch it a few times a year, right? Because I enjoyed it that much. Um, Everything, like you said, from the that made it believable in the beginning with the news report. That's what set the tone for the entire movie. So that was an important piece of the movie at the beginning, right? So everything, the going to greeting them at the house, the rules in the house, um, Mike coming in with the tools at the end, the dwellers in the basement, Blake coming in during the daytime. There was so much entertainment in this one. So for me, this one's a solid 5 tapes. It's one of my favorites.
If you catch
Yes.
glimpses of it, you'll be entertained, which is always a huge part. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's one of those movies that you can just watch over and over, like one of those movies that you can always put on because it's old, dependable,
hell yeah,
guaranteed to entertain.
absolutely. So yeah, that was our thoughts on Living Among Us. What did you think about it? Please don't hesitate to tell us in the comments or wherever you've listened to this podcast at the moment. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at We Found a Tape, along with on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon.
And don't forget, be kind and rewind.